Hello and welcome to another Retfurb video. On this video we're going to be stripping down this 300LX rear derailleur from Shimano. We're going to be removing all the old grime, grease, dirt, everything like that, and we're going to reuse all the original parts and get it all nice and serviced and get it back ready for use again. So the first thing I'm going to do here is remove the two bolts that hold the jockey wheel in. This is done with a 10mm spanner. With this video I've tried to condense it as small as possible whilst trying to retain the information shown how to strip it down and then rebuild it again. So obviously I don't want to cut out too much that you can't see how it's done. That's both the jockey wheels now removed. They can be put to one side ready to be cleaned, and now I'm just going to remove the small bolt which holds the cable in place once it's fitted to the bike. Now onto the main securing bolt for the derailleur. This is the bolt that mounts the derailleur onto the frame. So with this there's a small little circlip that needs to be prized out first before you can get the bolt out. These bolts can be quite tight, especially if it hasn't been removed since it was new. So the easiest way to do that is just put the Allen key in the other side and just twist it as you do it, and then it should make it a lot easier to come out. You can also see here I just used a small flathead screwdriver just to lever it. Obviously be careful where you lever it, but if you do it exactly where I did it, it just helps it come out. Now there's a few other little small parts which I'm just moving to one side. Always try to remember where they go. Sometimes it is easier if you get some small plastic clear bags and put them in there and label them up if you're unsure. There's not a hell of a lot to take off of these, but obviously you want to make sure you put it the right way around when you get to doing that. So now you can just push the screw out using your fingers and then just twisting it and it should come out from the derailleur. Now on to removing the two small derailleur adjusting screws. This is just simply unscrewed. So now we've got all the parts removed that can be removed. A lot of the other parts are pinned in, so you can't be removed without damaging it. So now we can look at cleaning all the parts up, scraping off any dirt, degreasing it all. So first of all we're going to start off with the jockey wheels. I'm just using a small screwdriver just to remove the hard grease which is on there, or the grease and dirt I should imagine it is. Just getting that off first with a screwdriver, and then we can wipe it down afterwards with some solvent degreaser. An old toothbrush helps with this, just to loosen it and clean off any of the bits that are in any sort of crevices or any sort of recesses that you can't get to with the cloth so easily. So I'm just going over this first to get the bulk of it off, and then you can use the cloth obviously to clean it up afterwards. I'm just doing the same thing here for all the small parts of the jockey wheel, all the little round bearing parts. They'll all go through the same process as the main part of the jockey wheel. Whilst I'm doing this derailleur, I'll just explain a little bit more about it. So I've actually got a GT Timberline that I'm restoring just to get it back to usable condition. It's not overly bad, but you'll see when the video gets uploaded for the whole project on that one, you'll see what's involved and what I'm doing with it. I just want to do it to just show an old bike that uses practically everything again, so it's recycled from the bike. There's a few bits that will be replaced, that have to be replaced, but the majority of the stuff that's on the bike will be reused, so it'll be recleaned and serviced just so we can show a process of reviving an old bike rather than just throwing it away and getting a new one. Now going back to the derailleur, you can see that I'm just cleaning up the main bolt, just cleaning off any grease and grime, and then moving on to the next part. I'm just using a solvent based degreaser to do all this cleaning. It's just the same thing that you'd use in a car body shop to degrease the panels ready for paintwork. Luckily with this rear derailleur, all the parts are serviceable that you can see. They're all cleanable. They're not in that bad condition. They're all pretty good, to be fair. They were just more dirty than anything. So a good cleanup and a good service will do this a world of good. The derailleur is from 1990, so it was fitted to a 1990 Timberline, which it will be going back on as previously mentioned earlier. I don't actually know a hell of a lot about this era of derailleurs. I'm not sure where this stood in the hierarchy of sort of Shimano products. I'm presuming that it's fairly low down, obviously not base sort of models, but I'm presuming it's one of the lower down models. I think XT was still going around this time. So yeah, if anyone knows any little bit more about it and where they would have stood in Shimano's sort of hierarchy, that'd be interesting to know. Here you can see I'm just cleaning the rear part of the cage for the derailleur. So I'm just cleaning it off, degreasing it, and I'm also just going to give it a dust of silver over the top just to make it look a little bit better when it goes back together. Now at this point we've cleaned most of the parts, so now we're just working through the last sort of bits to clean up, which come off the derailleur, and then we can go on to the actual derailleur itself and try and clean in around as best we can, get rid of most of the grime and dirt from inside where the mainspring is, Obviously doing it this way, we're not going to get rid of everything in there, but I'll do my best to clean out as much as I can before it gets re-greased. As you can see on these parts, the same as all the other parts, are just scraping off the worst of it. And then just working around with a degreaser on the brush and with a cloth, just getting off the worst of it, and then it can be ready for refitting. Now moving on to clean the main part of the derailleur. I'm just using a combination of scraping it, brushing it, wiping it, and also spraying it out with the degreaser using the nozzle on jet. I don't know if I actually show it on here, but I'm just doing that to get inside to try and clean it out as best as possible. Obviously it's difficult to get inside with the brush. I can scrape out a lot of the stuff, and then hopefully that will get rid of the majority of the dirt and grime inside. Just removing there the small part that holds the cable onto the derailleur. I left that in there, so I just removed that before carrying on with the cleaning. That's the main part of the cleaning done. Now I'm going to move on to polish some of the bare metal that's on the derailleur. I'm just going to use some metal polish to do that with a small Dremel, and I've got the polishing heads on there ready to go. I'm not aiming to get this to a real high sheen, like mirror finish. I just want to brighten it up a little bit and just remove some of the dullness on it. Using this auto sole polish and the Dremel, it just gets a real good finish, and it gets in all the sort of nooks and crannies of the Dremel head. It makes it a lot easier than trying to do it by hand. It's just a nightmare when you do anything by hand, unless you've got a sort of a bigger area. Anything like this, it's a bit more delicate. It just is a lot easier just getting the precision Dremel tool on there. Now that part's done, I can now look at putting some of the parts back onto the derailleur. So I'm going to now start greasing up the area where the main bolt goes. As you're putting the bolt in, just twisting it as you put it in just to spread the grease round. This will just help with lubrication in the area. Also it'll help to protect the bolt for the future. And now I'm just applying some grease in the area where the spring goes. When putting the spring back in, you've got to line it up to the small hole that's on the derailleur, and this will locate it in the correct position. This is probably the most difficult part to do when putting it back together, because you've got to compress the spring at the same time twisting it to get it over the little notch on the derailleur. You can see now the process involved in doing this. Once that's located back into position, you can then put the small circlip back into place. This can just be pushed on with a screwdriver, just using the flathead screwdriver on the flat side. Whilst I'm here, I thought I'd just give the bolt a quick buff up as well. Now to fit the cable end adjusting screw. This just screws back in. And now also to put in the two small derailleur adjusting screws. These can just be screwed back in, and then they'll be adjusted once it's back on the bike. Here I'm just putting the cable securing parts back into place. And now on to putting the jockey wheels back in. So again, I'm just going to lubricate all the parts on this before I fit it back onto the derailleur. And now placing them back onto the derailleur, you just need to make sure you've got these the correct way around, because with these, one's slightly fatter than the other on one of the sections. So if you don't have it the right way around, it'll rub, but you'll soon find that out when you do it. Obviously, if you put it on the wrong one, straight away it won't move. So you'll be able to swap it back easily enough. And now to secure them back in place with the 10mm headed bolts. When tightening these, you don't want to go too mad. You want to nip them up, but you don't want to go too tight that you might strip the threads. And obviously then just check that they're turning okay. Now I'm just going to go round on the main part of the derailleur, just all the mechanism and moving parts, and just put some grease in there. Now you could use something like chain lube instead, which is a little bit thinner, which will be better for some of the parts which you can't get the grease into so easily. But with this, if you can get it round as best as possible, move it round, it should work its way in there. So this is the last part that we're doing on the derailleur now. So once this is greased, it'll all be done and it'll be ready to fit back on the bike. As you can see, I think it came out really well. I think this will now last again for many years to come. It should be working how it was originally. There was no sort of signs of damage on it, particularly that it stood out, that it needed addressing. The jockey wheels were good. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Thanks again for taking the time to watch the video. It's really appreciated. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.